On the cusp of her 35th birthday, Nora Seed found herself adrift in a life steeped in regret. Her cat, Voltaire, lay dead by the road, a casualty she blamed on her own negligence. Hours later, she was summarily fired from her job at String Theory, a music shop, by her insensitive boss, Neil. Loneliness had become her constant companion, intensified by the fading of her friendship with her once best friend, Izzy, who had moved to Australia. Her relationship with her brother, Joe, was strained, marked by his belief that she had sabotaged their band, the Labyrinths, and her own sense of always letting him down. Her engagement to Dan had ended abruptly, just 2 days before their wedding, leaving her burdened with guilt. Everywhere she looked, Nora saw only the wreckage of unfulfilled potential and missed opportunities, believing her life was a cascade of wrong choices. Drowning in despair, she attempted to end her life. Instead of death, Nora awoke in the Midnight Library, a vast, ethereal space where time stood still at midnight. Here, she was greeted by Mrs. Elm, her kind old school librarian, a figure of comfort and wisdom from Nora's past. Mrs. Elm explained that the library existed between life and death, offering Nora an infinite number of books, each representing a life she could have lived had she made different choices. The Grey Book, the Book of Regrets, contained a chronological list of every regret Nora had ever held, its weight unbearable when open. Mrs. Elm urged Nora to choose a regret and explore the life that would have unfolded without it, cautioning that if Nora found a life she truly wished to stay in, she would remain there, forgetting the library. However, if disappointment set in, she would return to the library. The stakes were high. Continued indecision could lead to the collapse of the library and Nora's ultimate demise. Nora's first foray into an alternate life led her to one where she had married Dan and co-owned a charming country pub in Oxfordshire, a dream he had always cherished. She awoke to find herself with a wedding ring, a beautiful home, and a cat also named Voltaire, though a different feline. Yet, the reality was far from the idyll she had imagined. Dan, once her enthusiastic fiancé, was now a heavy drinker, perpetually stressed by financial woes and distant from her. He had also been unfaithful. The vibrant connection they once shared had dwindled, and Nora felt a deep sense of loneliness despite being married. The stark realization that this dream life was not what she truly desired brought her back to the Midnight Library, the disappointment a sharp, guiding force. Returning to the library, Nora was still reeling from the disappointment of the pub life. Mrs. Elm, ever the patient guide, helped Nora understand that regrets were often built on false assumptions. Nora's regret about Voltaire's death, for instance, vanished from the Book of Regrets when she learned that his demise was due to an incurable heart condition, not her negligence. This revelation taught Nora a crucial lesson. Sometimes, the only way to truly learn is to live through the experience. Mrs. Elm also encouraged her to broaden her horizons beyond her most obvious regrets. Next, Nora chose a life where she had followed her childhood ambition to move to Australia with Izzy, working with whales near Byron Bay. Instead, she found herself in Sydney, sharing a cramped, unkempt apartment with a conspiracy theorist flatmate named Jojo. The true shock came when she discovered that Izzy had died in a car crash just a month after their arrival, heading to Nora's birthday party. This life, far from the vibrant adventure she envisioned, was permeated by a familiar grief and the stark realization that despite her presence, Izzy was gone. This profound sadness, coupled with the unfulfilling reality of her daily existence, swiftly returned her to the Midnight Library. Driven by a desire for a successful life, Nora then ventured into a reality where she became an Olympic swimming champion, a path her father had always envisioned for her. She was famous, wealthy, and seemingly healthy, with a thriving career as a BBC sports commentator and author. However, this success came at a steep price. Her father, whom she believed had died, was alive but emotionally distant, having divorced her mother and remarried. Her mother had died years earlier in this timeline. More painfully, her relationship with her brother, Joe, was superficial, based on his role as her manager rather than genuine connection. Despite her achievements, Nora felt a hollowness, a sense that this life was not truly hers, shaped by others' expectations rather than her own desires. The realization that this perfect life lacked authentic emotional fulfillment, especially regarding her relationship with her family, ultimately brought her back to the library. In her pursuit of meaning, Nora then explored a life as a glaciologist in Svalbard, a remote Arctic archipelago, fulfilling her youthful fascination with the poles. She shared a cabin with a robust Norwegian scientist, Ingrid, and soon discovered the harsh realities of Arctic research. The perpetual daylight and freezing temperatures were a constant challenge. A terrifying encounter with a polar bear, where she narrowly escaped becoming its prey, shocked her into a profound realization: she desperately wanted to live. This unexpected surge of vitality, born from facing death, prevented her immediate return to the library, as she was not disappointed in this life, only scared. During this life, Nora met Hugo Lefebvre, another slider, like herself, who had been traversing alternate realities for years, each manifest as a different metaphorical place. His was a video store, with his deceased uncle as his guide. Hugo explained the many worlds interpretation of quantum physics, suggesting that every possible choice creates a new universe, and that Nora, as a slider, was experiencing these divergences. Their brief, intense connection in the Arctic, including a fleeting kiss, highlighted Nora's growing capacity for connection, but ultimately, she still felt a sense of displacement. The scientific rigor of this life, while providing purpose, ultimately felt like someone else's dream, and she returned to the library. Nora continued her journey, sampling countless lives. She was a solitary English teacher in Paris, a yoga instructor, a lifeguard in Spain, a published author, a concert pianist, a single mother, a travel vlogger, an eco-architect, and many more. She experienced wealth and poverty, health and illness, love and solitude. Through these varied experiences, she began to understand that every life, no matter how seemingly perfect, contained elements of sadness and challenge. She realized that constantly seeking a better life created a paradoxical dissatisfaction. She also started to lose her sense of self, blurring into the myriad versions of Nora Seed she inhabited. The library lights, once stable, began to flicker, a sign that her core life was dangerously unstable. Mrs. Elm warned her that the library itself was at risk if Nora didn't find a life to truly commit to. A pivotal conversation with Mrs. Elm led Nora to a profound realization. Many of the lives she had explored were not truly her dreams, but rather reflections of others' expectations or her own guilt. Mrs. Elm, through a game of chess, emphasized that a game is never over as long as there's a single pawn on the board, and a pawn, seemingly ordinary, holds the potential to become a queen. This metaphor resonated with Nora, who began to understand the importance of finding meaning in the small, everyday aspects of her root life. She recalled a conversation with Ash, the kind surgeon who had helped her bury Voltaire, and the genuine compassion he showed her. She wondered about a life where she had accepted his earlier invitation for coffee. Nora's next life was one where she had married Ash and had a daughter named Molly, living in Cambridge. This life was filled with genuine love and happiness. Ash was a loving husband and father, her brother Joe was alive and well, and her relationship with Izzy was strong. Nora worked on a book about Thoreau, pursuing an intellectual passion. Despite the overwhelming positive aspects, Nora began to feel like an imposter, a fraud. She hadn't built this life herself. She had simply stepped into it, a carbon copy of someone else's journey. This feeling of unearned happiness, combined with the lingering knowledge of the Midnight Library, created a subtle but persistent discomfort. As Nora navigated this seemingly perfect life, she encountered small details that reminded her of her original existence. She saw a former neighbor, Mr. Banerjee, in a care home, and wondered what small difference in her root life had kept him out of it. She also witnessed Leo, her former piano student, being arrested, a stark contrast to his musical success in her root life. These glimpses reinforced the idea that her original choices, however seemingly insignificant, had a ripple effect. The realization that her presence in this perfect life was a kind of theft, and that her root life held its own unique value, caused the library to re-enter a state of chaos, with books burning and the structure crumbling around Mrs. Elm. Time in the library began to tick forward from midnight, signaling the imminent end of her in-between state. In a final, desperate plea, Nora declared her desire to live. Mrs. Elm urged her to find the one unburnt book, the book of her root life, which was now blank, representing an unwritten future. Nora, amidst the collapsing library, scribbled 3 words into the blank book: I am alive. With this definitive declaration, the Midnight Library dissolved, and Nora awoke in her original bed, disoriented and physically ill, but profoundly alive. In the aftermath, Nora found herself in a hospital, weak but determined. She reconnected with her brother, Joe, who confessed his own struggles with alcohol and their strained relationship, a powerful reminder of the hidden complexities in her root life. Izzy, her best friend, also reached out, planning a visit to the UK, hinting at a rekindled friendship. Nora recognized the everyday kindness of her neighbor, Mr. Banerjee, and realized the beauty in seemingly small gestures. She embraced her messy, imperfect life, understanding that true happiness wasn't about avoiding pain or finding a perfect existence, but about living authentically, with purpose, and being kind to herself and others. She began teaching piano again, reconnected with her student Leo, and made plans to volunteer at a homeless shelter. Nora, no longer a black hole of despair, but a resilient volcano of potential, decided to live, embracing the unwritten future of her own design. She understood that her life, in all its uniqueness, was a beautiful, ongoing melody, and she was finally ready to compose it herself.